Imagine describing a dog to someone who's never seen one before, and then asking them to draw it. Now, imagine describing a neighbourhood, a furniture store, a city to someone who's only ever seen these things in glimpses, and asking them to recreate it. The Backrooms is an assumption of memory, a manifestation of what remembering is. Something familiar, yet not quite right. A copy of what happened, without the fine details to complete it. Ever since coming back from watching the Backrooms, I've pondered over this concept non-stop. From the visual style, the music choices, the aesthetic, trying to understand what it all means. After weeks of thinking, I concluded that the film explores what it would look like to see the content of our minds, our imagination, laid out in front of us. Our darkest secrets, our fondest memories, the places, objects, and faces we all remember, manifested in physical form. Yet, that wasn't quite far enough, so I researched more around this idea of mental imagery, and how the brain functions in visualizing these places, objects, and faces. I came across this diagram of someone trying to imagine an apple. This diagram demonstrated the varying degrees of detail to which people can imagine images, where different people imagine objects with varying levels of detail. From there, this led me to discover conditions like aphantasia, which is an inability to create mental images in your mind's eye, and by contrast, hyperaphantasia, which is the opposite, an ability to create mental images with the same level of detail as reality. But most interestingly, this diagram reminded me of a very specific shot we see in the Backrooms. That of the interior of Mary, the psychiatrist's childhood home, with the camera descending through the floor, past multiple copies of the same room, but each time getting more and more distorted, misremembering the previous iteration ever so slightly, to the point where any trace of the original image is lost. Through flashbacks in the film, we see Mary's memories in their truest form, detailed to the point of reality, whilst the Backrooms hazily remembers, copying reality, but forgetting along the way. And this contrast is why I call the Backrooms the caricature of the world. It forgets the contents of what it remembers, and exaggerates features of our world to the point of irrationality. From this point, I dove deeper into this concept of mental imagery, landing on a psychologist by the name of Oswald Kulp, who pioneered the concept of imageless thought at the University of Würzburg. Like aphantasia, imageless thought is the belief that one's experiences hold significance, even when devoid of place, symbols, or words. Meaning can be obtained from the feeling of something when all visual stimuli are taken away. Again, this immediately reminded me of why liminal spaces are so unique. It's this feeling of unease, this feeling of things being not quite right, a feeling which isn't necessarily associated with any one symbol or image. This is why the Backrooms is so effective in its visual presentation. It presents an image which defies a single definition, existing in a realm of uncanny, where words often fail to describe what we are seeing. I think this perfectly encapsulates this quote of describing a dog to someone who has never seen one.
It's like, imagine describing a dog to someone who's never seen one before and then asking them to draw it. They might get some things right, but there's no way they get everything right. The devil's in the detail.
Memories, objects, faces are poured into this space without the necessary visual accompaniment to recreate them perfectly. The Backrooms exists as a space which lacks this perfect image of what it's trying to remember, purely conjuring these spaces and entities out of verbal description. Or again, like Oswald Kulp's theory on imageless thought suggests, the imagery of the Backrooms, or our thoughts, can exist without the need for pictures, but instead can be formed through sensory means. But for a character like Clark, ironically this dynamic is turned on its head. For him, it's the real world that lacks any solid meaning. His relationship troubles, financial burdens, failing business and alcohol dependency all culminate towards his view that the real world has fundamentally failed him, subsequently breaking him too, to which he now longs to be fixed.
How do you feel, Clark?
He is someone that struggles to make sense of a chaotic world which seems to constantly put him down. He is someone lacking control. Clark is defined by a sense that the answers to his troubles are eluding him, hiding from him. That is why he seeks out Mary's therapy, desperately trying to follow her teachings to open the window to his mind, to find the answers to why his life is the way it is. That is why his discovery of the Backrooms is so problematic. He suddenly discovers this space outside of reality, affirming his view that the real world has failed him. Or again, the real world which lacks any solid meaning. Later in the film, when Mary discovers the Backrooms in search of Clark, who has been missing for some time, we see that his behaviour has changed. Instead of a man constantly on edge, now here, he believes he finally has control. He tries to force definition onto this new world, making it in his own view, a view that the real world refused to bend to. Clark latches onto the fact that the Backrooms eludes any solid definition. It brings him comfort to know that there exists a place which reflects himself. However, when Clark tries to force his own meaning onto the Backrooms, it rejects him. Rather ironically, his own twisted caricature kills him. This pirate Clark entity is his self-view manifested into a physical body. The height, the outfit, the face are all things that encapsulate his negative self-image. Clark thinks he cannot fit into the real world, hence the height, the struggle to navigate. The outfit is a representation of his self-deprecation. The pirate outfit is meant to mock his struggles. And finally, the face is constantly in a state of sadness or worry, obviously reflecting Clark's inner turmoil and feelings of inferiority. There is a cruel irony in the way the Backrooms treats Clark. Throughout the film he believes that meaning is something waiting to be discovered, that if he looks deeply enough into his own mind, he will eventually uncover the answer that has always been hidden from him. But the Backrooms never offers answers, only reflections. It does not reveal objective truths about the people who enter it. Instead, it amplifies the way they already perceive themselves. This idea circles back to Oswald Kulp and the Wurzburg School's theory on imageless thought. If thoughts can exist without complete visual representation, then meaning does not necessarily arise from accurate images, but from the sensations, emotions, and associations attached to them. The Backrooms appears to comply by this same rule. Its spaces are never accurate recreations of reality, yet they remain instantly recognisable because they preserve the feeling of a place long after its details have disappeared. It is not trying to remember the world perfectly, it is trying to remember what the world felt like. Unlike Clark's attempt to understand it, the Backrooms is not some puzzle to be solved, but an interpretation to be experienced, to be walked through. It behaves like memory itself, changing its shape according to emotion, rather than any logic. By believing the Backrooms contain some absolute truth, Clark gets it completely wrong. The more he pushes his own worldview onto the Backrooms, the more violently it pushes back. Clark's end, rather ironically, comes from his own self-view, his own caricature, manifested into physical form. The more he asserted his own broken self onto others, the greater the monster in the Backrooms became. Overall, I've been following Kane Pixel since his first Backrooms found footage a few years ago, and the more I thought about the Backrooms, the less I saw it as a setting for horror, but more as a place which explores memory itself. It imagines what our thoughts would look like if they were stripped of certainty, rebuilt only from pieces, feelings, and imperfect memories. That's why its spaces feel so strangely familiar, and why its entities feel less like killing machines in typical horror to run from, but manifestations of the people who encounter them. The Backrooms is not interested in perfectly recreating the real world. It is only interested in recreating the way we experience it in our minds. It turns memory into a physical place, imagination into architecture. That is what makes it so unsettling. Not because it is entirely otherworldly, but because every distorted hallway, every exaggerated room, and every warped reflection feel as though it came from somewhere we already know, yet can't fully remember.